for a web host, you should make sure to get one that has staging. Maybe you've never heard of it, or if you've heard of it, it might seem like something that's only for experts or people who have special needs. But if you haven't heard of it, I'll go over quickly what is staging. In the WordPress world, it has many different meanings or names kind of associated with it. It's called a sandbox, a dev environment, a test site. But basically, staging site is a copy of your website. Its defining characteristic is that any changes you make to it will not affect your live site. So you can go and make any kind of changes you want, break it, do anything you want, and your live site stays up and perfect just like it was. Live site is another word we're going to use regularly during the webinar, and that just means your website. It's the regular website that is on the internet and is there for the whole world to see, and it's important that it stays up, which is one of the things staging sites can help do. As I mentioned, WordPress uses the term staging site in several slightly different meanings, but having a copy of your site that is separate from your main site, live site, is how we'll use the term today.
So the title of the webinar is 5 WordPress problems that you have that a staging site can help solve. So the first problem that everybody has on their website is you can't afford downtime. And for some people, this is because you have a really busy e-commerce site and you have sales coming in 24/7, and if your website is down for 10 minutes, you might lose hundreds of dollars in sales. Or maybe you just have a little blog where you write about what goes on in your neighborhood, and you have a weird uncle who only checks the internet 1 day a week, and you want to make sure the site is up for that 10 minutes he's on the internet. So, no matter what, you don't want downtime. The whole point of having a website is it's always available. So a staging site can help with that, because basically anytime you are doing anything that might cause downtime, you can do it on a staging site. So anytime you're doing, plugin updates, making changes to your site, anything that might cause downtime, do it on a staging site, and your live site will stay up, and your e-commerce sales will keep on going through, and you won't have any downtime. Anytime you're doing something a little bit unpredictable, you want to do it on a staging site. You don't want surprises on your live site. You want those surprises to happen on a staging site. My favorite story about why you should always use a staging site no matter what is one time I was doing some work for a client. The client wanted it was a tiny change. It was 10 minutes of work. It was no big deal. So I just went and did it on the live site. Except I didn't have FTP access to the site, so I did it in the code editor, which you should just never use the code editor, but I did that. And 9 o'clock at night, I broke the client's site. I couldn't access the dashboard anymore. I was getting the white screen of death. So, 9 o'clock at night, I have to call my client and say, I'm really sorry, but I just broke your website. I need FTP access. And he says, oh, the only guy who has FTP access is on vacation in Hawaii right now. So then we had to call Hawaii, and of course it was even later at night there. And eventually we did get into the site, but the site was down for a couple of hours. And that was really, really bad. So I should have done it on a staging site.
Well, it's also true, like if you're a dev and you're just trying to do an update for a client, you don't want to look like an amateur by breaking their site, which you're going to do. Like plugins will always break things on occasion, and it's nice to know that you can test a plugin update somewhere without having to go through a lot of phone calls and angry emails back and forth to a client who's like, what am I paying you for? And I've had clients who've installed more than one gallery plugin at the same time, and they did this and completely white screened their website. So it's one of those, if you want to try a different gallery plugin, let's set up a staging site and you can play with it and see if you like the new gallery first without breaking your live site.
You mentioned plugin updates. That's a big thing, as are theme updates.
Yes.
It's better than it used to be, but every time there's a big update, or even sometimes small updates for plugins or themes, they will break the site. It's happened to everybody, and it sucks. You feel utterly helpless, hopeless, and just pulling your hair out. What went wrong? What happened? How do I fix it? It's especially awful for e-commerce plugins because it directly loses them money with their site being broken. E-commerce plugins especially are bad at being complex, finicky things that are easy to break.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to an e-commerce plugin. And I have one site that's, we're not running e-commerce, it's a banking site. So people access their banking through a link on the website. And to break the site means that a lot of people don't have access to their online banking. So what happens when we do the updates once a week is we do it on a staging site. And I just at least test that the plugins aren't going to break the site before I go in and update the live site.
Yep.
You know, that's a mission critical thing.
Well, then it's for any website. It's a really good idea. You know, once your site is broken, there are lots of things that make it even worse. If you don't have backups, you know, that makes it, you have to figure out what happened and what broke, other than just restoring from a backup, and that can take forever. Or if you don't have a dev, you have to call a dev to figure out what happened. Or if you don't have one, that's even worse. You have to take the time to find one that you trust and can figure out what happened and fix it. So it's always a really good idea to test any kind of plugin updates or theme updates or WordPress updates on a staging site.
And you know, sometimes with updates, it's super obvious right away, like, you know, you get a white screen, okay, that update broke the site. But sometimes, especially with e-commerce stuff, it isn't obvious. I run a site that has a weird shipping calculator on it, and sometimes the shipping calculator works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes an update will break it, and you don't know if it works until you try a transaction. And of course you don't want to try out transactions on your live site either. So for that site, every time there's an update to that shipping plugin, even if it's just a teeny little, you know, teeny little update, I always test that out on a staging site, and I always place an order on the staging site to make sure that one is working. Go ahead.
Well, sometimes it's more obvious. There's another e-commerce site that I manage that some random updates to the e-commerce plugin make all the images for the items go away. And you know, it's not always big updates. You know, it can just be a minor update, and poof, all of the item images are gone. So
test your updates on a staging site.
Yes, test updates.
Yeah.
Another thing that staging sites are really great for is you want the freedom to make changes on your site. And you know, maybe you have a shiny brand new site and everything's great and you don't want to make any changes, but just wait. No matter what, the great thing about WordPress is it's so easy to make changes on your site. So even if all your changes are going smoothly, sometimes even a minor thing like switching gallery plugins, it takes a little while to test things out, and you don't want to have under construction or coming soon on your site. You want your site to stay up while you're making those changes. So again, staging site is a great solution here. You make a staging site, you try out the new gallery plugin, you try out the new slider, you rewrite your theme, you switch to a completely different theme. And you know, maybe your changes are just going to take an hour, and maybe they're going to take 3 months, but at least you can do that on a staging site so that your customers don't see, or your visitors don't see broken page layouts or funky things happening on the site.
Yeah, some themes handle content on the homepage differently. And so when you want to change themes, you know, there are some that will do all that fancy graphs and parallax stuff by using widgets. And so if you're trying to switch themes, you can end up with a homepage that has almost nothing on it for a significant amount of time, and that means you either have to work after hours and on weekends and hope nobody comes to visit your site, or to do it all on a staging site. You know, back in the day when everybody had HTML, it was easy to do a WordPress site somewhere and then bring it in and just override all the HTML, but now a lot of people have WordPress sites, and so to change themes significantly means a pretty significant amount of moving stuff around, widgets and layouts and photos, and what is actually happening on the live site can be really ugly. And I've started using staging sites just for that, because it allows me to make significant changes, change themes. The clients can go in and take a look. You can take a look, test things. How do I like it? Try it on different devices before I bring it in live, and bringing it in live is just a matter of minutes, as opposed to, you know, everything happens like at 12 at night or 1 in the morning while everybody is asleep. So, and just to change widget layouts or background photos is nice, so that your visitors aren't seeing every time they click on a page, everything changes. Because it can be very disorienting to them. They don't know if they've been like dragged away to a different website somewhere, if they've been hijacked. So yeah, try a staging site is a great place to do a redesign on a website, or to try a big plugin change like a gallery or a lightbox.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I love it for that. Thank you.
And one of the other things that might not have happened to you yet, but probably will in the future, is you want to give someone else, you know, a developer, you know, a content editor, something like that, access to your site, but you don't necessarily want them to have full access to your live site, or even, you know, editor access to your live site. There's lots of reasons you might want to give someone access. You know, if you're running into trouble with a plugin or a theme, oftentimes they will, the author will ask if they can have access to your site when they just can't figure out what's going on with the plugin. Or if you're doing the aforementioned redesign and have hired someone, you're entrusting someone with a lot of power and responsibility that they may not take all that seriously. It's a nice buffer to give them, you know, a staging site that, hey, you can go do everything you want to do. Don't worry if you break it, because it's the staging site. Live site is still up and running. The worst case scenarios I've heard of are, you know, I've got a friend with a friend of a friend who does web design. He can redesign your site for you, and, you know, it's
Yeah.
those situations never go well, and they can be really, really expensive to dig yourself out of if they've made permanent changes to the live site and broken it.
Exactly. I've done tech support for people, and it was very common for people to just leave their username and password for us to go and log in. And the problem is, as a tech support person, is you don't want to break their site, but sometimes you do actually need. Yeah, but there are times that you do actually need to go in and start messing around with things to troubleshoot.
Yeah,
And
a lot of plugin developers will ask you to, you know, disable all of your plugins so that you see, you isolate that this is a problem with my plugin or your plugin, or and doing that on the live side is just, it's ugly. So.
Yeah, and so it's nice to be able as a tech support person to say, well, it's just a staging site, and I can go in and disable and re-enable anything I need to troubleshoot what's going on. And yeah, we've all gotten the project with, you know, my nephew designed this site for me and it doesn't work. Or they went in and they just did some changes for me, and now all of my blog posts are gone. Yeah. Which has happened. Yeah, it's frightening, but yeah, it's nice to be able to have a staging site. The other nice thing is it's a great place if you have staff that you want to train in how to use the site. You can set up a staging site and let them play with adding images and posts and editing pages and doing whatever they want so they can break stuff at will, but they aren't breaking the actual live site, you know. And people are always afraid to do anything.
Well, and that's a perfect segue to the final thing that a staging site can help you with is you want to learn more. Nobody knows everything there is to know about WordPress. I mean, you're talking here to 3 WordPress professionals, and we'll readily confess we don't know everything there is to know about WordPress. And I work with clients all the time who they have this shiny new WordPress site and they're scared to death to touch it because they don't want to break anything. So staging sites are great for that because it doesn't matter if you break a staging site. And really the best way to learn is by breaking things and having to figure out what you did to break it and how to fix it. So a staging site, this is why people often call staging sites a sandbox, because it's a place where you can go play and it doesn't matter if things break, your live site is still going to be just fine, but you can learn a lot from just breaking things and seeing how to fix them or just experimenting and seeing what happens. So staging sites are a great solution for that.
Yes. Yes, playing around and breaking stuff. I've had clients who haven't updated their WordPress since 3.2 or 4, I forget. And when I asked her why, she's like, "Well, everything was running and I didn't want to break it." You know, it's one of those. Well, everything is dialed in. So, but in a staging site will take that fear away. You can go in and update stuff and know that it's not going to break your site, and then you're nice and you're working, you're secure, you've got all the updates from everybody, and yeah, everybody who's ever developed a website, their first one that they ever do, and they white screen it, you get that sad, sickening feeling like my life is now over. And because it's a live site and there's nothing but a big error message on it. And so a staging site, at least you can do that and not cry, you know.
Then
there
it
might be
becomes
some
learning experience instead of tragedy.
Yes. It's rehearsal and not like real. But yeah, breaking things is the best way to learn stuff. Getting in there and digging around. And a staging site is kind of like doing it with a net. You know, there's not the fear that you're going to like splat hard. So I've really, you know, I've done everything on dev sites before, but the staging site is so much easier to use because I'm using the actual content from the site as opposed to doing an export and an import or writing a whole bunch of lorem ipsum text. I mean, that's one of the big advantages to the Stagecoach stuff is I'm literally importing all of their content. And I can see what it really, really looks like when I'm actually playing with it. So that's a big difference between a staging site and a dev site. It's a huge advantage when you're designing it.
Yeah, you know, being able to see the actual live content of the site is really a nice thing to be able to offer with a staging site.
Yeah, and all of their plugin configurations.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a huge benefit.
So by now, hopefully you're wondering how you can get a staging site. Well, it's a lot easier these days than it used to be. There are many hosting companies that provide plans that offer or include staging sites. Some examples are Flywheel, GoDaddy, Pagely, and WP Engine. I'm sure there's a couple more that I can't think of right now. Usually they're more expensive plans, but you know, the benefits we've discussed today and you know, typically the quality hosting they provide are well worth the added expense. As Kelly mentioned, you can do it yourself. It involves a lot of work. You have to copy the files, you have to copy the database, you have to change where the database URL is pointing to. It's time consuming. It takes a fair bit of know-how, and things can definitely go wrong when you do it yourself. But if you do it correctly, it's a good experience, and you've learned a lot doing that. There are also plugins that let you do it. Backup Buddy has an option to do that, and there is, of course, WP Stagecoach. So, Morgan, you were going to say something, or okay?
Well, I've done the Backup Buddy approach over the years, and it works, but it's a little more time consuming. It's easy to get a copy of the site and then develop it somewhere. It's a little more complicated than to pull all those changes back to the live site without mucking up anything. The WP Stagecoach, the staging site, is actually just the cleanest way to do it and the fastest. I've just started using it, and I'm just wicked in love. As somebody who designs websites, it's making my life a lot easier. And then for the clients I have who have mission critical websites, it's a nice low risk way of testing everything without breaking their site, because they can't afford it to be offline. So it makes all of us a lot happier and a lot less timid about what happens on Monday mornings when everything gets updated. Yeah, staging is a really fast way to do this stuff. Even if you're just, it's just your one site, it's really, it's just so much easier for a person doing just one site or for a developer doing a bunch of sites than trying to do it manually. It really is. So yeah, I'm a big fan now of staging sites.
Yay.
Yay! And they're not paying me to say this, okay?
So hopefully you can see why staging is such a great thing and why it's so useful for everybody, whether you just have your own little blog or whether you've got a giant e-commerce site or whether you're a developer managing dozens of sites. And we really hope you'll start using staging sites, whether you do it through your web host or with WP Stagecoach or with some other plugin. We really think it's important for you to be doing your work on a staging site and keep your live site happy and live.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you everybody for your time. We can open up now to questions. And I actually see Tim Delaney has already posted a question. Actually, you've posted two questions. So Tim's first question is, I have a website that needs to make use of a child theme, or multiple websites that need to make use of child themes but do not. Can I stage, create the necessary changes to change themes to child, and then apply them back? And yes, absolutely.
Yes.
You're asking kind of specifically about WP Stagecoach's functionality. So yeah, definitely in a generic sense, you can use a staging site to create a child theme and get the child theme configured and working. And if you do it with WP Stagecoach, then yes, you can create the staging site, or you can create your staging site, you can create the child theme on the staging site, and then when you can click import, and all of those child theme files and all of your plugin and theme settings will move back over to the live site. And were you?
I was going to say, Tim's second question is, if you give people access to a staging site, can you also prevent them from moving data from the staging site to the live site? And it again depends on your staging solution. I believe most of them tend to be oriented around the live site. So if you don't have permission on the live site, a user account on the live site, you won't have the ability to make changes or take stuff from the staging site into the live site. That's how WP Stagecoach works. And I believe most of the hosting providers probably do it in the control panel, so you'd have to have another layer of authentication there as well.
I'm pretty sure with WP Engine, you have to do it either from, I think you do it from the live site dashboard, don't you? But most staging solutions, yeah, you have to have access to the live site to be able to do the import. So if you don't, you can give someone access to the staging site, but not the live site. Anybody else have questions? Comments?
We've had fun.
Yeah. And if you do think of questions afterwards, you can always email us at support@wpstagecoach.com. We're always happy to answer any questions you have.
And they do answer questions pretty quickly, so, because I've had a couple.
Great, well.
Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you,
and thank you so much, Kelli, for being part of our webinar. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It was lots of fun.
Yeah.
We hope you all have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.